Hello and welcome to the news on NTAi International. I'm Lami Ali. NTAi is the sign language interpreter. First, let's take the headlines. Catholics worldwide mourn the passing of Pope Francis at the age of 88, with world leaders paying tribute for his exemplary reign. South Korea's former president Yoon Suk-yeol appears in court this Monday for the second hearing of the criminal trial to defend himself against insurrection charges. United Nations Special Representative to Haiti has warned that the Caribbean nation is approaching a point of no return situation. Now, Catholics worldwide mourn the passing of Pope Francis, the 266th pontiff of the Catholic Church and sovereign of the Vatican city-state. The Vatican announced that he died at his Casa Santa Marta residence in the early hours of Easter Monday. Jumai Stephen has more on the life and times of late Pope Francis.
Con profondo dolore devo annunciare la morte.
Cardinal Calvin Farrell, Camerlengo of the Apostolic Chamber, there announcing the passing of Pope Francis with these words: "Dearest brothers and sisters, with deep sorrow I must announce the death of our Holy Father Francis. At 7:35 this morning, the Bishop of Rome, Francis, returned to the house of the Father." The Pope's last appearance was on Easter Sunday at St. Peter's Square, where he wished Happy Easter to thousands of worshippers, the highest profile appearance after his discharge from hospital last month, having been diagnosed with pneumonia.
Cari fratelli e sorelle, buona Pasqua.
Late Pope Francis was born Jorge Mario Bergoglio on the 17th December 1936. From 13th March 2013 until his death, he was the head of the Catholic Church and sovereign of the Vatican City-State. He was ordained as a priest in 1969 after 13 years of study. His death has set in motion the centuries-old process of electing a new pope. The new pope has to be chosen by the Catholic Church's most senior officials, known as the College of Cardinals, all men. There are currently 252 Catholic cardinals, 138 of whom are eligible to vote for the new pope. Jumai Stephen, NTAi News.
The world is mourning the demise of Pope Francis, the 266th pontiff of the Roman Catholic Church, whose passing marks the end of an era defined by radical humility within one of Christianity's oldest institutions. His unwavering compassion and persistent call for humanity to see itself as one family is yet another hallmark of his purple legacy. He was 88. Umenka Amarachku tells us more.
Elected in a time of turmoil, Pope Francis stormed the world from the moment he appeared a pontiff who refused the ornate papal apartment, choosing instead a modest guest house. A man who washed the feet of prisoners, embraced the disfigured, and dined with the homeless. But to understand his journey, we must look back.
Pope Francis was one of a kind as a pope. I mean, from day one, on the 19th of March 2013, when he was elected as pope and came out atop St. Peter's Square to greet the people on the balcony, the first thing that he used in endearing himself to the people was his name. He chooses the name Francis. That is the first time any pope is making use of that name, because popes usually change their names when elected, or they pick a new name.
As pope, he became a voice for the voiceless. His historic meeting with Grand Imam Ahmed Al-Tiyab in 2019 pledged Muslim and Christian unity against hatred, a testament to his belief that dialogue is the only path to peace.
All right, officially there will be 9 days of mourning for the Pope beginning from today, 9 days of official mourning. Now, 15 to 20 days after the morning, we'll have a conclave, that is the election of a new pope. And this duration of time is given so that all the cardinals all over the world can come back to Rome to partake in this conclave. And so cardinals who are 80 years below are eligible to partake in the conclave.
In recent years, declining health shadowed his mission. A lying lungs confined him to a wheelchair, yet he persevered, declaring that the church must work with people even when it is tired. His last public appearance on Easter Sunday saw him bless a trembling crowd in St. Peter's Square. Pope Francis, born December 17, 1936, passed at 88, an advocate of the outcast, shepherd of the poor. The Pope passed away on Easter Monday, similar to Pope John Paul II, passed away on the Vigil of Divine Mercy Sunday, which fall during the Easter week. May his soul remind us all to build bridges, not walls. May his light continue to shine even beyond. Umeka Rachuku, NTAi News.
President Bola Tinubu has joined world leaders, Catholic faithfuls and Christians worldwide in mourning the passing of Pope Francis, describing him as a humble servant of God, tireless champion of the poor and guiding lights for millions. His passing, President Tinubu said, coming just after the celebration of Christ's resurrection, is a sacred return to his Maker at a time of renewed hope for Christians, saying His Holiness served the Church and the Master of the Church to the end. In 2013, he stepped onto the global stage with a message of mercy, urging the world to see the face of Christ in the marginalized, refugees, migrants, and the forgotten. He maintained that the pontiff was an instrument of peace who deeply embodied the message of Christ, love for God and love for humanity, especially in a time of division. He builds bridges between faiths, the rich and the poor. As a steadfast advocate for the developing world, where he consistently spoke against economic injustice, he ceaselessly prayed for peace and stability in troubled regions. On behalf of the government and the people of Nigeria, President Tinubu extends condolence to the Catholic Church, the global Catholic community, and the Christian faithful, praying God Almighty to grant his beloved servants eternal rest. And former President Muhammadu Buhari has joined Christians across the world in mourning the demise of the head of the Catholic Church, Pope Francis, who departed the earth on Easter Monday. Reacting to the news of the death of the pontiff, the former president said Christians in Nigeria and all over the world would miss the exemplary leadership of the church by a pope who served the poor and the weak and cared much about migrants and refugees. In a statement by Malam Garba Shehu, former President Buhari said he was a pope who strove to build a beneficial complementary relationship between the followers of the world's two greatest religions, Islam and Christianity. Just hours before his demise, he made a call for an end to the war in Gaza, hoping that Israel and Hamas will heed to this call as a final respect to the Pope, who had the distinction of bringing climate change to the Vatican and recognizing the Palestinian state. The former president added he wished for a new leader who would build on the inspiring legacies of Pope Francis. We're now joined in the studio via Zoom by the Catholic Bishop of Oyo Diocese, Bishop Emmanuel Badejo, to discuss the passing of the spiritual head of the Catholic Church. Bishop, thank you for joining us on the news.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
Now, we want you to share with us what happens as soon as the Pope passes on.
Well, it was a big surprise to everybody, given that the Holy Father appeared at the Vatican yesterday to celebrate Easter with all the people, the multitudes who gathered there, greeting everybody and wishing them a very happy Easter. only for the day to dawn today and all of us to hear that he had passed on. It's a day of mourning, but at the same time, it's a day of great thanksgiving. The spiritual implication of the fact that the Pope died on Easter Monday, a day after the resurrection of Jesus Christ, should not be lost on anybody. As we remember that Jesus Christ has come to conquer death and darkness, we are very sure, because of our faith, that the Pope himself has been taken up to heaven to his reward by the merciful Jesus, who died so that all of us might live. May Pope Francis rest in perfect peace.
All right. What are some of the legacies that Pope Francis has left behind for those of us that are living?
I think that the legacy of Pope Francis is so transparent. He being a man who insisted a lot on the social justice, on peace, and on the dignity of every human being, on his concern for the earth, for the environment, the earth which he called our home, so that all of us learn to have a proper attitude to ecology and to earth in the way in which we live, insisting that if we take good care of our earthly home, it will take care of us. Pope Francis stayed and stood all his life on the side of the poor, the marginalized, the migrants, the refugees, those who have no voice in society. That legacy should touch everyone, not just Christians, especially the leaders of today, that being a leader is about having love for those for whom we are responsible and showing that love not only in words, but in action. That is why the Pope could not even rest when doctors asked him to rest and stay away from normal duties until the very last hour before he died.
No doubt Pope Francis has left indelible footprints. Now, why is he called Holy Father, and what's the significance of his stewardship to the Catholic Church and to the global community?
Pope is the vicar of Christ on earth, and he is the successor of Peter. Just like the church itself in its characteristics is holy, apostolic, and universal, the same thing applies to the person who represents the authority of Christ in the church. He is a human being, but just at the same time, he represents Christ. And because the church, even with all its limitations and weaknesses, still remains holy, it is imperfect because human beings constitute the church, but it is holy because it is the body of Christ. Therefore, the Holy Father is called holy because of the office that he holds, because of Christ that he represents. And the implication for all of us is to believe that we human beings can actually be assumed into holiness. Depending on the way we live out our faith. Actually, this applies not only to Christians, but also to anyone who believes in God, that having come from God, God expects that all of us live the kind of life which, after our life here on earth, we can be assumed back into God. Our souls will not die. They belong to God. And therefore, we human beings hover between our imperfections and the holiness to which God has called us. The life of Pope Francis challenges all of us to try the possible best we can to live a life of love. Out of love comes humility, the sense of service, the sense of solidarity, and the sense of accommodation and acceptance of others in spite of their weaknesses.
Thank you so much, Bishop Emmanuel Badijo, for those insights.
Thank you for having me. God bless you.
God bless you too. That was the Bishop of Oyo Diocese, Bishop Emmanuel Badijo, speaking on the demise of Pope Francis. You're watching the news on NTAi International. Time now to take a break. Do stay. Thank you for staying. World leaders have been paying tribute to the late pontiff, the first pope from Latin America. Central in their messages are Pope Francis' humility, deep love for God and humanity. Jummai Stephen reports.
French President Emmanuel Macron described him as a man of humility. Dutch Prime Minister Dick Scoff says he was a role model for Catholics and non-Catholics alike. Russian president remembers Pope Francis as a defender of the highest values of humanism and justice, while Ukrainian president says he gave hope, eased suffering through prayer, and fostered unity. Others are Britain's King Charles, who said, "My wife and I were most deeply saddened to hear of the death of Pope Francis. He served with such devotion throughout his life and ministry," as well as Italian Prime Minister Giorgio Meloni. From the African continent, Kenyan President William Ruto calls the Pope's passing a big loss to the Christian world, praising his unwavering commitment to inclusivity and justice. Ethiopia's Prime Minister on X wrote, "May his legacy of compassion, humility, and service to humanity continue to inspire generations to come." While that of India says, Pope Francis will always be remembered as a beacon of compassion, humility, and spiritual courage for millions across the world. There were tributes from Latin American leaders, including Mexico's president, who said the pontiff was a humanist who stood for the poor, peace, and equality. Uruguay's president said the Pope left at a moment when the world needed him most. That of Bolivia said he was not only the leader of the Catholic Church, but also a staunch friend of the great homeland and a fervent defender of the most vulnerable. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said he joins the world in mourning the passing of His Holiness Pope Francis.
I want to extend my deepest condolences to Catholics and all those around the world inspired by the extraordinary life and example of His Holiness Pope Francis. Pope Francis was a messenger of hope, humility, and humanity. He was a transcendent voice for peace, human dignity, and social justice.
Meanwhile, Argentina and Brazil have announced 7 days of mourning in his honor. Jummai Stephen, NTAi News.
South Korea's former president Yoon Suk-yeol appeared in court Monday for the second hearing of the criminal trial to defend himself against insurrection charges over his short-lived declaration of martial law, and Vietnam court cuts tycoon's jail term to 30 years in a $17 billion money laundering case. Chukwu Nunso Nwabweze reports.
Monday's court appearance is the first time the media were allowed to film the former president's criminal trial, where he was seated in the defendant's chair before proceedings began. During the first day of his criminal trial last week, the former president defended himself in court, speaking for more than 90 minutes, denying that he had committed insurrection. If found guilty, Yoon would become the third South Korean president to be found guilty of insurrection after two military leaders in connection with a 1979 coup. For charges of insurrection, Yoon could be sentenced to life in prison or the maximum penalty, the death sentence. Last week, police attempted to raid Yoon's former presidential office and his security detail as part of a probe into alleged obstruction of an arrest warrant execution, but failed after presidential security denied them permission into the residence. Yoon spent weeks in his compound in January, protected by members of the Presidential Security Service who had remained loyal to him. In a related development, a Vietnamese property tycoon who was jailed for life in a $17 billion money laundering case had her sentence cut to 30 years on appeal on Monday after she claimed what happened was an accident. Property developer Trong My Lan had already lost a challenge against the death penalty in a separate case in which she was found guilty in April last year of stealing money from Saigon Commercial Bank and fraud amounting to $27 billion. An appeal court in Ho Chi Minh City ruled on Monday that a life sentence she was handed for 3 crimes during a second trial in October will be reduced to 30 years. Prosecutors said she had repaid a quarter of the $1.2 billion she defrauded from thousands of bond investors. Tens of thousands of people who had invested their savings in the bank lost money, prompting rare protests in the communist nation. Chukwu Nunso Nwabweze, NTAi News.
United Nations Special Representative to Haiti has warned that the Caribbean nation is approaching a point of no return, leading to total chaos due to surge in gang violence. Just as lawyers vow to appeal sentencing of Tunisian opposition figures. Here again is Chukunonso Nwabweze with the details.
Maria Isabel Salvador, who is also the head of United Nations Integrated Office in Haiti, told the UN Security Council that as gang violence continues to spread to new areas of the country, Haitians experience growing levels of vulnerability and increasing skepticism about the ability of the state to respond to their needs.
The national security forces, while deploying their utmost effort, cannot succeed without a unified strategic command structure free from political interference and operating under civil authority. In addition, they require more specialized anti-gang units, better equipment, and improved working conditions.
Salvador cited cholera outbreaks and gender-based violence alongside the deteriorating security situation, particularly in capital Port-au-Prince, with authorities struggling to cope.
Without timely, decisive, and concrete international assistance, the security situation in Haiti may not change.
The armed groups have been battling for control of Port-au-Prince, and clashes have intensified as the rival gangs attempt to establish new territories. A Kenyan-led force authorized by the United Nations has failed to push back the gangs. The mission has around 1,000 police officers from 6 countries, but was intended to have 2,500. In other news, lawyers and relatives of Tunisian opposition figures who were convicted of conspiring against state security on Monday denounced what they called made-up verdicts, confirming that they will appeal the judgment. On Saturday, a Tunisian court handed down jail sentences of up to 66 years to multiple defendants, including vocal critics of President Kais Saied, in a mass trial criticized by rights groups. Chukunonso Nwabweze, NTN News.
In emulation of Jesus Christ, Christians must always show love to their neighbors and avoid every inclination to judge others based on religion or region. Nigeria's First Lady Oluremi Tinubu said this while hosting the youth wing of Christian Association of Nigeria, Yowikan, to Easter brunch at the Villa. State House correspondent NTAi was there.
This is the second Easter homage by the youth wing of the Christian Association of Nigeria, Yowikan, to Nigeria's First Lady Oluremi Tinubu. Unlike the first, it afforded members of the association the opportunity to share Easter felicitations as well as dine and wine with their grand patron. Addressing her guest, the First Lady says she is encouraged by their visit and show of love, noting that it takes sacrificial love and compassion to change the world.
When we look at the Christian faith, we can only be a Christian if we love the way Christ has told us. To love God first with all our might. I didn't bring you here because of politics. Yeah. I brought you here because of the love you showed. And you can see for a whole year, your card was in my office. For a whole year.
She called on youth to be at the forefront of promoting gender equity, pointing out that there is room for women who are willing to thrive in the country.
You make sure that when you are dealing with men, God has given us wisdom. You deal with them with wisdom, and then you can always have a way.
While expressing the appreciation of Yowikan to the First Lady for her interventions, its national chairman, Belusom Chukwu Ewerem, said Yowikan is ready to run with her vision for peace and development by sustaining engagement with their Muslim counterparts to foster religious harmony in the country.
We will also appreciate your motherly assistance for some slots to be extended to the Christian youth to be part of the forthcoming National Youth Conference being convened by Mr. President, so that we can contribute our own quota to the betterment of the present and future youth of our dear country.
To further demonstrate the support of the association to our Renewed Hope initiative, the Yowikan National Chairman announced the launch of the Renewed Hope Neighbor to Neighbor movement and decorated the First Lady as the grand patron.
We are to help drive the achievements of this administration from one neighbor to another.
For members of UWICAN, their labor of love produced a bumper harvest as the First Lady announced the donation of 7 14-seater CNG-powered buses to aid its operations and evangelical works across the country. From the banquet hall of the presidential villa, NTAi, NTAi News.
The National Assembly has extended the dates for the resumption of plenary sessions from Tuesday, 29th April 2025 to Tuesday, 6th May 2025. A statement from the clerk to the National Assembly, Kamoro Gulona, explains that the extension is to allow senators and members to participate in the Workers' Day ceremony. The extension would also enable members of the Senate and House of Representatives attend to other engagements in their constituencies. And that's the news at this time on NTAi International. We thank you for being a part of it. I'm Lami Ali. Shegun Ajayi has been the sign language interpreter. Do have a good working week ahead.